He's like, I guess I'll just use Linda's blood because they have no connection to each other. So he brings Linda's blood and just splatters it all over the place. Now, obviously, the jury is not buying it because, like, that's dumb. You're dumb. Like, what kind of an excuse is that? She's late for work one day, and she's working at a bank in New Mexico. So when she was 5 minutes late to work, all of her colleagues were freaking out. 5 minutes late to work. They start freaking out. They're like, should we call the cops? Should we call her? I can't call her. What's going on? And so they decide 15 minutes after Girlie hasn't showed up that one of the coworkers by the name of Jesse, he was going to go to Girlie's apartment to knock on her door and investigate, where the hell are you, Girlie? And then Kathy, the manager, her boss, was going to call 911. So Jesse leaves the apartment, he calls to work and he says, listen, I don't see her around. Her car is parked here, which is really weird, and I can't find her anywhere. What do we do? So that's when Kathy is like, I'm calling 911. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. She calls 911 and they're like, 911, how can I help you? And she's like, listen, my coworker, my employee, she's missing. Well, when's the last time you saw her? Well, she was supposed to be at work 15 minutes ago. And they're just like, what? What are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, 15 minutes ago and she's not here. So they're like, okay, man, like you need to tone it down. Like, I don't know if you're understaffed or something and you're really stressed out, but we can't really do anything when a full-blown adult is late to work for 15 minutes. And they said, I can't even file a report. Like, I can't even physically type into my computer or on a piece of paper, file a report until she hasn't been seen in 24 hours. Can't do anything. But she doesn't stop. Not only does she call 911, but Kathy calls like the precincts, like the direct number. And that's when the police looked into it and they saw a whole bunch of shit that was happening. So Girlie had actually come into the police station to file multiple reports on Diazin on domestic violence. So he had a lot of domestic violence charges. It was so bad to the point that the judge had actually granted a restraining order, and Diazin had violated the restraining order, and he was supposed to show up in court like in a couple of weeks. So they're like, okay, maybe something is weird. So they don't know that yet, but they see that he had broken his restraining order. They see all these charges, so they're like, okay, fine. Maybe we will do a wellness check. And so the police decide to go check on Girlie's apartment. Now, when they get to the apartment building, they find the manager of the apartment, the same manager that let Jesse in, and they ask, hey, can we get into Girlie's apartment? And he says, well, we were just in there and nothing was out of place. So he's like, no, like, I don't know. Nothing was weird in the apartment, but I will tell you, I mean, she was running away from Diazin really hard. Like, she got this unit in this specific building because we had security measures. I mean, the girl was scared for her life. So the police are like, okay, fine, let's go look for Diazin. So they go to Diazin's place, and Diazin's house was really weird because the front door was wide open. Like, it was wide open. And so they just like walk in and the whole place is empty. I'm not even just talking like someone was in a rush and moved out, but it was empty. Like, there was no signs that anybody had lived there recently. It was just completely empty. So the police are like, what the fork is going on? They walk outside and a neighbor is passing by and they're like, hello neighbor, can we talk to you? And the neighbor is like, oh yeah, a couple days ago there was like this big ass U-Haul that was just moving furniture out of the unit and I didn't even know. And so they're like, okay, so he moved. And they're like, do you know where he moved to? And the neighbor's like, a couple weeks ago, he did say that he was dying of leukemia and he was gonna move to El Paso to be closer to Mexico because in Mexico, that's where he's getting his cancer treatments. I think that's what he said, yeah. I'm pretty sure. So the police are like, okay, that's really strange. Thank you. And then another neighbor passes and they say, hey, do you know anything about this neighbor that used to live here? And the neighbor says, what the craziest thing happened. The other day, I saw him get out of his car, completely camoed out, wearing blackface. No, literally. But I mean, was it blackface or not? Because his entire body was covered in black. So the police are like, okay, well, thank you. We're gonna look into it. So this is when the police decide to go back to Girlie's apartment and they're like, we should probably look inside. So they go back to Girlie's apartment. They go inside the apartment. They immediately smell overpowering bleach. And they're like, this is not normal. Like, this is not... So I think the two dudes, like the building manager and Jesse, maybe they thought Girlie was just like a really clean person, but when the police went in, they were like, this is not a normal amount of bleach that people would have in their house, like to use to clean things. Like, even if you're OCD, your house probably is not going to smell this strongly of bleach. So the police, they don't find Girlie. For the next 4 days, their main thing is to look for Diazin, because maybe if they find Diazin, maybe Girlie's being held hostage, maybe they can just kind of rule out if he had anything to do with it. And 4 days into the investigation, they get a butt buttload of calls. And all of them said that, hey, Diazon, the guy that I think you're looking for, he's harassing me and he's threatening to kill me. And then the last call was from a woman by the name of Vonda. Now, Vonda worked at a local adoption agency. Now, this is really pertinent to the story. She was the one that oversaw the adoption of Dimitri. So Dimitri was put up on adoption like 3 weeks ago, okay? And this is gonna get really, really strange. So apparently, according to Vonda, this is what she told the police, that Diazon had walked in with Dimitri to the adoption center and said, hey, listen, I need to put up my little son for adoption because it's the saddest thing. I'm dying of leukemia. And she 100% believed him because in her office, he's coughing up blood. Like, he'd be like, oh, excuse me. And then he would cough and there would be blood on the napkin. So she's like, oh my God, this dude is dying. So I need to find a house for Dimitri ASAP. I need to find a family for Dimitri ASAP. So he had told her that I adopted Dimitri in Mexico, and the papers are kind of wishy-washy because it was all weird. But yeah, I just want to put him up for adoption because I'm dying. And so she was like, well, you know, I gotta follow the rules. So she said, you gotta take a physical. I gotta get some exams done by you. I gotta get some exams done on Dimitri. And so both of them had all of these exams done. And to her surprise, she found out that Diazon was not dying of leukemia. He was not dying, period. He also did not have leukemia, period.
Well, that's awkward.
So she's like, what was that blood? What is this story, you know? And then the second thing was that Diazon was not Dimitri's adoptive father. Diazon was Dimitri's biological father. And she found out through the exams, and he did not tell her. So she's like, okay, what do I do, you know? So she's like, I don't know what to do. Like, this man seems scary. Obviously, she wants to get Dimitri away from a man like this because you don't know what these people are capable of if they're willing to lie about having leukemia. So another strange story that Vonda would actually tell the police is that she had confronted Diazon after this restaurant incident and had said, you know, I mean, I just thought it was weird. Like, if you are the biological dad, where's the biological mom? I feel like maybe she should be a part of the process of, does she know that her kid's about to get given up, you know, for adoption? And he says, well, Dimitri doesn't really have a biological mom. That doesn't make sense, you know? No. He was born in a lab.
Shut up.
Like in a test tube? Like IVF? Like you guys did in vitro? No. Oh, like a surrogate? Maybe that's why you're saying he doesn't really have a biological, like you paid for a surrogate? No. He was born in a lab. He was in a petri dish, and we grew him from a tiny fetus to a full-grown baby in a petri dish. She tells the police that. So obviously the police are going to look into the adoption papers. That's when they find a name. The emergency contact for Diazon, her name was Linda Henning, and we're going to get into her. So then the police were able to trace all of these harassing calls to a place in South Carolina. And they go all the way over there, the South Carolina police. They arrest the motherfucker. They find Diazon. And they also find out that during this time, he's got 3 fiancés. Only one of them knows that he has a wife or had a wife. And now the wife is missing. Like, all of them are just like, oh my God, I thought I was his only fiancé. What the heck is going on? I thought I was the only fiancé to this world-renowned genetic scientist. What the hell is going on? And so they're all like, by the way, he's not a genetic scientist, but that's not the point right now. And so all of these fiancés are like, what the fork? So his entire place gets searched, and they find vials of blood. Yeah, they find needles and test tubes. Now, the vials of blood, we can assume that they belong to the women that he were dating or the people that he had just conned about like doing cancer research with your blood. They found a steam cleaner that becomes pertinent to the story later. They also found Girlie's Malaysian ID and her wallet. So 2 weeks since Girlie went missing, they had arrested him, they had brought him back to New Mexico, and they were already pressing charges for the murder of Girlie. Girlie had vanished. They did not find a body. They did not find a trace yet. So how did they charge him with murder? Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's all because of a woman by the name of Linda Henning. Now, one day, she just immediately is like, hey, fiance, I'm breaking up with you and getting engaged to someone else that I just met 2 weeks ago. And everyone's like, what are you talking about, Linda? Are you absolutely crazy? And she said, no, I met this man at a lecture at a local college. And they're like, what kind of lecture was this? Like, what kind of lectures do you go to? You're a fashion designer. Like, was it about sewing? Like, is he another fashion designer? Who is he? We need to know. And she said, well, it was a lecture by a guy who believes in reptiles. They're like, everybody believes in reptiles, Linda. Have you ever seen a lizard? We've seen reptiles. And she's like, no. Reptilian overlords. You wouldn't understand. Your brain's not big enough to understand these things. And they're like, what? Yeah, reptilian overlords. But she was like, all the people in power, fucking reptiles. All the billionaires, reptiles. Powerful families, reptiles. Politicians, pop stars, reptiles. Now, to just dig a little deeper into everything, because it's pertinent to the story, they also said that in order for these reptiles to maintain human form for a long period of time is to drink human blood. That is the only way. Now, there are differences in blood. Some people have better blood than others, but the best type of blood that the reptile aliens like to drink in order to maintain their human form, that they can maintain their human form the longest amount of time, is a specific type of blood that is only produced by females. And it's only produced when females are being actively tortured. And then so she had asked Diazin to attend these UFO conferences with her. He showed up in there, he slammed the door open, and Diazin said, "Listen up, bitches, I'm an alien." They're like, "Oh, okay." And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm immortal. I'm actually 4,000 years old." And they're like, "Okay." And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm one of the good ones." Okay. So she genuinely believes that Diazin is an immortal alien, and this is when Diazin starts talking about his wife, and he's like, "Listen, my wife, she's also an alien, but she's not one of the good ones. She was pretending to be one of the good ones, but she's a fucking reptile queen who wants to kill humans. You're a human, she wants to kill you." And so Linda was like, "Oh my god, that's really bad. Like, that's really, really bad, isn't it, huh?" And she would like tell her friends, like, if Girly were to disappear, it'd be really good for the world because she's a reptile queen and she's evil. Now, later, Linda Henning would constantly tell the police, "I've never even met Girly in real life. Like, I don't even know what she looks like." We later find out that Linda Henning has banked at that bank before, and banks save all the transactions, especially who the fuck your teller is, just in case some weird shit goes down. And literally, Linda had Girly as her teller multiple times. So they're like, "Okay, you're obviously lying." So then the forensic evidence finally comes in from Girly's apartment, and they find inside of Girly's apartment there were the large spots of blood mainly belonged to Girly. The smaller blood splatter belonged to Linda Henning. So at this point, a grand jury had indicted both of them for first-degree murder of Girly Chew. And so obviously the jury's sitting there, they're listening to the whole thing about how Linda lied about not knowing Girly, about never meeting Girly. Turns out Girly's her bank teller, all of these things. And that's when the defense calls in their star witness, Diazin.
What?
Diazin. So Diazin takes the stand and he says, "Listen, Linda is innocent. I murdered Girly on my own." He already pled guilty. He already was sentenced to life plus 61 years, So he was like, "I did it all by myself. She had no idea about any of this." And this is what he had to say verbatim about Girly Chew's murder. So he claims that he had to kill her because she threatened to get custody of Dimitri and she did not want to give him up for adoption, which later she ended up being so scared that she did sign the adoption papers. And so he's like, "So I hired this hitman. I paid him $10,000 to kill Girly, right? So I didn't even kill her. I just hired someone to kill her." And so he was like, "So then I hired someone to kill her. Then I was going to go in and clean the crime scene. So I bleached the whole place and Girly's blood was there." And I was like, "You know what? In order to throw off the investigation, I'm just going to pour some random woman's blood all over the place too that has no connection with Girly, because then they're gonna be like, oh, was this like a random murder?" And so he had brought a vial of one of his other girlfriend's blood, but then it had broken in the car on his way to Girly's house. So you turned it back home and the only vial of blood that he had left was Linda Henning's. So he's like, I guess I'll just use Linda's blood because they have no connection to each other. So he brings Linda's blood and just splatters it all over the place. Now obviously the jury is not buying it because that's dumb. You're dumb. What kind of an excuse is that?
Yeah.
And also, that doesn't...
Makes no sense.
That makes no sense.
Yeah.
And so they were like, okay, no. So they found Linda guilty. So he went after really, really vulnerable people. Girly Chew really thought that he was a good person, moved to America to live with him, to raise Dimitri. And then this shit happened. Her body has still never been recovered to this day. They only found her blood in her apartment, on the tarp, on the clothes, on the highway. But it's odd. It's odd, very odd, because we can kind of assume that she died a very painful way, because their whole thing was that blood has to be tortured blood of a female. And we can maybe assume that she was cannibalized. I don't know. The police theorize that she is somewhere in the Albuquerque desert.